Hey everybody. So I wanted to talk to you guys about another method with another acronym. This time I want to talk to you guys about the watch method. So as we get further into this semester, we're going to be looking at analyzing and evaluating and picking apart other people's arguments. We've already done that with the rhetorical analysis, but now we're going to do that with a bit more depth to it. So that's what today's video is all about, and hopefully this will be a fairly short one. I'll try to keep it short. But watch simply stands for writer, audience, text, context, and help or hinder. Okay, so what do I mean by all of those? Well, writers. The first thing you want to look at when you're analyzing or evaluating somebody else's argument is, what do you know about the person who wrote it? What do you know about their qualifications, their background, their ethos? What biases do they have? What affiliations or allegiances do they have? Where'd you get that article? Is it from a website that is known to have certain political leanings? How did they establish their own ethos? How did they attempt to connect with their reader? How do they attempt to establish their authority or the authority of their sources? Question that authority. Do they actually have the authority to speak on the topic that they're talking about? Do the sources that they use have the authority to speak on that topic? So, this is all dealing with the writer. Okay. Next, you have the audience, which there's the audience that's reading it, and then there's the audience for whom it's intended. Are they the same thing? You're the one reading it. Are you the one it was intended for? How do you know? For example, let's say that you're reading an article that is incredibly biased towards a political side, whether the left or the right, and you happen to be on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Well, you're clearly not the intended audience, but you are the actual audience. Okay? Think about, what does the writer or the one giving the information, what did they attempt to share in common with their audience? Maybe there's certain beliefs that they share with their audience, or certain beliefs that they're hoping that they share with their audience. And oftentimes you can tell this by the assumptions that they make. So they'll be making some sort of claim, and they'll make the assumption, let's say, for example, and don't shoot the messenger, this is just an example, but let's say that they were making an argument about abortion, and let's say that they were making a case against abortion, and they started talking about religion and how it's against the Ten Commandments or against God, or whatever. You can make the assumption that they are religious, that the author is religious, and that the author is assuming that their audience is religious as well. Whether you happen to be or not, that might play into whether or not you are the intended audience or not. So keep in mind about the writer. What do you know about them? Keep in mind about the audience. What do you know about the intended audience? Then look at the text. What sorts of features stand out about the text? This is where we did the rhetorical analysis. Did they use a lot of sarcasm? Did they use a lot of jokes? Did they rely heavily on pathos or ethos or logos? Did they make it clear what their goals are, what they're hoping to accomplish? Is their claim obvious? Is their argument well organized? Or does it seem like they're trying to conceal certain evidence that might be contrary to the goals they're trying to get across? Do they write with a certain formality? Are they talking above their audience? Are they using high vocabulary? These are all things that you can determine on the text. And again, that's going to go back to tie into the writer and the audience. If they're using a lot of high level vocabulary, then you can assume that they're making certain assumptions about their audience, or they're trying to get across that they themselves have a certain level of education or intellect. So there's a lot that you can tell by the way it was written. Then there's the context. Do they provide context for their claim? Do they provide context for their evidence? Does it feel like they're missing certain things or not giving you the full picture? Can you summarize their argument wholly and completely? If not, maybe they're trying to conceal something, or maybe they just didn't write it very well. Maybe there were certain limitations, like they didn't use enough evidence, or they didn't use enough ethos, or they never established their ethos. Or maybe they gave a ton of evidence, but all the evidence they gave was kind of sketchy or from unreliable sources, or maybe they didn't cite where they got their information from. All of this stuff plays a huge role in the authenticity of the piece of writing, in your analysis of whether or not it was effective. And then last but not least, look at the Kairos. Is this argument still relevant? Is it timely? Is it something that is happening now? Is it something that recently happened? Is it something that could happen again later? What is motivating this writer to make this piece? Can you figure that out? Because if you can, that's going to go a long way in helping you to figure out where the holes in their armor are as far as their argument, or it'll go a long way in helping you to figure out their motivations, which could in turn help you to analyze it more effectively and get to the bottom of what it is that they're trying to get at. Because let's be honest, I'd love to say that every argument is done in good faith, that every argument is done with good intention, but that's just not the facts of life. There's a lot of people out there that try to make claims, and they use a lot of shady tactics to do it. They try to hide evidence that's really hurtful to their cause. They try to make certain other pieces of evidence sound more important or more influential than they might actually be. Maybe they try to twist certain logos or imply certain ethos that just isn't there. So these are all things that can hurt their overall effectiveness of their argument. And so when you're analyzing their argument, these are things to consider. So hopefully that was helpful. And again, we'll talk more about this in depth later. This was just an overview.